doing that, I was face to face with it. It was holding me by my throat, and it felt like it was sucking something out of me.
I probably should have been more scared than I was when I witnessed the exorcism.
I turned and looked on my right side. When I did, there's a beam on the side of the tree, a large beam. It's looking at me and I'm looking at it.
After I hit the lock button and looked back up, I saw red eyes staring back at me.
That they're going to show multiple gods all over the earth, be able to speak in people's languages, and at that point, it kind of converge into this one entity, which will be revealed as extraterrestrial. You'll realize that aliens are the gods of old, and at that point, it'll wipe religion out of the context of humanity.
No, it couldn't have been a person, I know that. I know that people can't run through the woods like that.
So this thing comes into view, and I see it. It's 50 yards away from me. It's walking on two legs. It's huge. This is a big, hairy-looking being.
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is uNcomfortable. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it featured on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your experience, so get a hold of me and let's get yours on a future episode of Uncomfortable. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65, and please remember to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. This is the main way that you, the listener, can help get this show out in front of more people, and with more people listening, that means more people coming forward with their great experiences. If you're interested in helping support the show, head over to patreon.com/uncomfortablepodcast770 and check out the 3 different levels we have there and see if anything appeals to you. Or if a standalone donation or support is more your liking, you can do that as well through Red Circle. The links for both will be in the show notes below. Now, if you've joined me at either of the previous Bigfoot and Brew events that I hosted, it may interest you to know that we have locked down September 14th, 2024 as the date for the next event. Again, being held within the wonderful confines of Sister Lakes Brewing Company in Dowagiac, Michigan. There's been some discussion lately about the possibility of opening this event up to additional topics. Topics that you hear throughout the episodes of Uncomfortable. Tentatively, the new working title for this event will be Bigfoot and Brews and Spirits 2. As far as speakers go, I've already lined up Amy Boo from Ohio. She's part of the Olympic Project and a fan favorite. And speaking of fan favorites, I have the Archbishop Christina Rake, who has agreed to speak on the paranormal and its relation with God. There are a number of speakers I am in talks with throughout the day. If you all keep your fingers crossed, we may be able to entice Bodine, the Bigfoot, into returning for the 24 event. I'd like to give a big shout out to Mr. Nick Orton of Tales from the Grid Square. Nick was kind enough to send me signed copies of Tales from the Grid Square, volumes 1 and 2. Ladies and gentlemen, these books are available at Amazon, and I highly recommend, if you have any interest in the military and paranormal, these are some great, great reads. Tales that are unusual from military are sent to Mr. Orton, both active, retired, and they all deal with some of the unusual things they've witnessed throughout their time during serving their country. So again, huge thanks to Nick Orton of Tales from the Grid Square. If nothing else, please make sure you follow him on Instagram. He does a great job of posting regularly, and you'll catch up on some of the stories on there. As for tonight's guest, I think it would be safe to say you could consider him a modern-day Renaissance man. Thomas Johnson is the proprietor of the House of Phacops Rock Shop in Adams County, Ohio. It's roughly 3 miles from the Great Serpent Mound there in Peebles, Ohio. His shop is a must stop after visiting the Serpent Mound. That's what I did. For the first time, it was not a disappointment. Filled with amazing rocks, crystals, different type of sedimentary treasures. As you walk to the back of the shop, you'll be stopped in your tracks by what looks to be a world-class collection and display of fossilized trilobites. His collection has been featured by National Geographic and the Smithsonian. This gentleman has a great deal of knowledge about the weird and unusual in and around the area, from crop circles to UFOs, and even gives tours of an ancient meteorite impact crater in his local area. So, if you will, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to Mr. Thomas Johnson. Thomas, welcome to Uncomfortable.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for taking the time, sir. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again. It's been, first part of October, I think it was, when I stopped in. I think it was the weekend of the 8th when I was able to physically stop into your shop. Really neat place. You helped me with getting something special for my lady friend, and we had some friends. I had some friends with me. JJ 777. She was JJ Rose 777. She was there. You guys had quite an interaction at that time. My friends Matty O and his wife Storm were in there as well at the same time, and it was a very nice way to end the day after having been at the Serpent Mound, and it was interesting. I wasn't eavesdropping, but it was interesting to hear your conversations with some of the others about the oddities and the strangeness that goes on in that area of Ohio. So that's why you're here, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me. Is with the shop, I try to make everybody comfortable. We tend to look at it as a safe space, and we call it the alternate universe.
And it was a very low key, very calm. There obviously no sales pressure. It was just kind of peruse at your will, and quite honestly, I mean, I have to say, not to blow smoke, but I mean, you're one of the friendliest gentlemen I think I've ever come in contact with. I mean, just a very, very mellow, nice, calm demeanor about yourself, and very, very receptive.
Yeah, it comes from studying fossils and being out with the earth, and I've learned a lot about patience and just how to receive the vibes of the earth, and that reflects into the people that I meet, and I get to have some great conversations with people and find out who they are and where they're from and what's in their mind.
Well, you definitely left an impression with me. So do me a favor. Before we get into the weird, why don't you, we'll do this at the beginning and then we'll do it again at the end of the episode. Why don't you tell everybody where you're located, how they can find you, websites, Instagram, Facebook, all that noise, if somebody's interested in reaching out to you.
Sure. We're located in Adams County, 3.5 miles from Serpent Mound at the intersection of State Route 73 and State Route 41. And it's right across the street from a Dollar General, which used to be a cow pasture a few years ago. And they decided to start developing the area. And I think they're getting ready for the World Heritage designation of Serpent Mound. So industry has tapped into that, and they're starting to look at areas around this countryside to develop.
What is that? Is that going to be some kind of a large celebration, or is that going to be?
It's what it is World Heritage is a group of people over in Europe that look at all the important sites on the earth. Like the last designation was for a site out in Newark, Ohio. and it was a Hopewell enclosure. It's a great circle and octagon, and it was a lunar site where the Hopewells went ahead and lined up the moon in that 18-and-a-half-year cycle. And so what happens is that puts them in the same classification as the Taj Mahal and Stonehenge and all these other important sites. And what it does, it advertises the particular site internationally, so the attendance goes up. In other words, Serpent Mound might be 40 or 50,000 a year, and it might jump up to 1 million a year.
Yeah. See, that's interesting. I mean, I knew that there was a correlation between that and Stonehenge. I did not realize that the Taj Mahal was also a part of that.
Well, it's I was just using it as an example that, these important sites that are scientifically important or culturally important, they designate them as a World Heritage Site, and that just draws attention to them. It helps them out with tourism more than anything.
Yeah. Well, that would be a huge shot in the arm for your area, because from what I remember of it, it wasn't like I went driving around outside of the road that you were on and the road that I came off of from the Serpent Mound, but it seemed for the most part very rural. So that would probably be a huge shot in the arm for you guys financially if that were to happen.
Yeah, well, I'm not looking forward to it.
There is also a downside to it, yes.
I have enough to keep me busy, but anyway, the location, I picked the location out. I've been doing research in the area on trilobites since the 1970s, early 70s, and I was on a site working for the National Museum on a grant out of the Walcott Foundation to study the state fossil in 1985. And I was previously working at the Corps of Engineers doing research on their emergency spillway up in Waynesville, Ohio, about an hour and a half away. And I had to go into the literature and figure out where the first examples of this particular trilobite was found, and it was Adams County. So I traveled to Adams County, and I was standing in this little stream in the middle of nowhere, and the landowner just happened to be driving by and see me standing down there, and he busted me for trespassing. And we became friends, and he ended up selling me 22 acres of land on a land contract, and for $100 a month. And at that time, I was working for $1 an hour on a grant, so it worked out fine for me. And so I was situated there for several years. And then I came up to, went on a trip over to Egypt. It was a world peace mission, of all things. And we're over there in Egypt, and somebody said, "Hey, do you know where Serpent Mound is?" And I said, "Well, yes, I live about 15 miles away." And they said, "Well, we'd like to get some pictures of it for our album." So I drove up past this house in the middle of the winter, and it was for sale. And the rest is history.
And that's the house that you're currently in right next to the shop.
Exactly.
So the piece of property that you got on land contract, how fruitful was that? How
it still is. It's like really? Yeah, the largest trilobites in North America are found there, and we've just been slowly teasing them out of the sediments over the years. And about once a year, I find a big one, and it ends up going to a museum somewhere.
Yeah.
And
I gotta say, I was shocked. So my son's a geologist, so he may know way more than I do. I'm sure he does. But any of my experiences with seeing trilobites, they were always in the neighborhood of a half inch or an inch, maybe a little bit more. When I walked in, I struggled with your display back there, because I was looking for something that would give me an indication, whether a plaque or something that these were representations of or copies of, and they weren't. They were literally huge trilobites and like borderline perfect. it was stunning to sit there and look at those.
Oh, thank you. That's been my lifelong passion. And that's how I got recognized by the National Museum, was for my skills and preparation. And I met them at a international rock show in 1984, and they were planning for a gallery that was going to open in 1990 called Life in the Ancient Seas. And after going to the National Museum and seeing their specimens in-house, as museums go, or repositories, they don't have anything that's prepared. It's all unprepared, just as it comes out of the ground. Mm-hmm. And so they were at this international show looking for specimens to buy. And I had chances to sell them trilobites, and I just said, why don't you just come out to my place and I'll loan you some trilobites for your gallery, then you won't have to buy them. And they liked that idea, so they came out and looked at about 1,500 specimens, and took a little break. And after that was over, I asked the curator, I said, so which ones are you interested in?
All of them.
We want all of them. So I about hit the floor on that one. But they ended up taking it. It was a 25-year contract.
Wow.
And it really opened up some doors for me as far as doing research and working with other major museums. And here I am, a guy that has no formal education at all.
No college.
No college, and now I teach the teachers. And
isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
I love stories like that.
It's you can't plan it. That's the way my life has been. I can't plan it. It just happens.
So can people find you on Facebook or?
Yeah, on Facebook, it's, I'm not sure what our Facebook handle is. I should have wrote that down. I know on the internet, it's alternateuniverserockshop.com.
And that in itself is interesting to me, alternate universe. A little less confusing after having talked with you. My in-person interaction with you, I think I can kind of see where that comes from. But you just came back from, was it one of the Dakotas?
Yeah, we just did some ceremony in South Dakota on the Yankton Reservation.
And what was that? What was that thing called? The event?
I believe that was just a Star Knowledge in Remembrance 11/11, and it was a conference and celebration for the life of one of our friends, Chief Golden Light Eagle, who was a Sundance chief, and he passed just a little over 2 years ago from the COVID. And so it was a gathering of people from the reservation and other parts around the earth. And we all got together and told stories and give lectures, and it was just a nice time. It lasted 3 days. Most of our conferences do, and they all revolve around the Star Knowledge.
And or promise me that we're going to get into that.
Okay. It's a teaching that has been around for apparently a long time, but the Lakota have decided to bring it out and make it public to where people can learn about it. And they've actually written a few books about it. And their philosophy is, like many of the Native American tribes, is that we were seeded here from other constellations. We're caretakers of the earth.
You know, that is, when you say it out loud and you say it to normal people, that's an eye roll, that's a tilt of the head, that's a quizzical look on the face. But, and I've said this a lot of times, if you were to take every creature on this earth and put it in a lineup and put us at the end of it, everything that you look at has got claws or fur or feathers or scales or gills, and everything looks remarkably organic, and even though they're completely different species and completely different looking animals, they all look like they belong together. And when you get to us at the end of that line, we are the one thing that does not look like it belongs here.
Right. Yeah.
And that is something that I have struggled with in recent years. It will not leave me. I truly feel that if there is anything that is not natural to this planet, I think it's us.
Right. There's a lot of people out there that believe the sooner we're gone, the better.
I think the Earth would probably agree with that, at least for the most part.
Yeah.
Well, your area there around Peebles, you've got some remarkable things that take place there. It's the home of a very large, ancient meteor crater, correct?
Yes.
And I heard you speak about some strange energies in that area, and the Serpent Mound. I have to say, I was at that Serpent Mound probably an hour prior to getting to your shop, and really, I know that 99.9% of the people that go there to walk the path around it and view it in its entirety. And when I got there, I was just struck with this overwhelming desire. And immediately when I got to I believe it's the tail end where you start, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There was a bench there, and all I wanted to do was sit down and just kind of look out over it and just kind of soak it in. That's all I really had any desire to do. Mm-hmm. I wasn't interested in walking around and taking pictures and any of that. All I wanted to do was just sit there and kind of soak it all in. And I thought that was kind of strange. I mean, I've learned in recent years through doing this show and talking with a number of people that are like-minded when it comes to this strange stuff, and just kind of paying attention to what, I don't know if it's what your body's telling you to do or what the energy there is telling you to do. And I just was very struck by it. All I wanted to do was just sit there, and I didn't want anybody around me. I just wanted to sit there and feel what was going on. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it was mildly interrupted by a couple of people, but it's a beautiful place, and there is some serenity there for sure. But then when we got to your shop, I heard you, I forget who you were saying it to, but you had figured out the code, and the code, I believe, was maintenance emergency.
Oh yeah.
And I was overhearing you talking with somebody else, and then I kind of focused in on that, and I was shocked to find out what that was.
Yeah, it was a sad day. One of the fellow, in fact, he was from your state. He was from Indiana.
Was he really?
And he had a family, and he just decided to go up there and be in peace on the day that they were closed, and take his life. And the park closed down on Tuesday. They're normally open, and their first response was, "Well, we have a maintenance emergency. You can't come in." And we've heard this before when they closed the park unexpectedly, and I'm just, we're just wondering, well, how many times has this happened?
Yeah.
So it's they're of course they're not going to come out and say, well, somebody just offed themselves in the park.
Right.
But that's the thing about all these different sites, if you will. People go there, and that's where they feel at peace. And that's the way I justify what happened. I mean, the man wanted to be alone. He chose a place where he wanted to go on, and that's his prerogative.
Yeah.
But the place is Serpent Mound is the way I look at it. It's a place of new beginnings, and the significance of the serpent itself, with the head of the serpent on summer solstice sunset. That's considered a day of rebirth by the sun worshipers, the people that built Serpent Mound. And they constructed over 100 of these serpent mounds in North America via the river systems. And they were influenced by the Olmecs down in South America some 10,000 years ago. And that practice of sun worship and farming went all through the Americas, starting in South America and going into North America, and probably around the world. But they followed the river systems up from the Gulf of Mexico, and they ended up at Serpent Mound. But you can go virtually anywhere in North America and find a Serpent Mound. And most of them will be oriented towards either sunrise on June 21st or sunset.
Really?
And I see evidence of this rebirth when I having this rock shop. Just as somebody walking down the street, you just don't hear this. You almost have to be like our rock shop. We're stationary, and we're receiving a lot of people through tourism. And we get inquisitive. Well, why are you here? And a lot of people that come have no idea why they're here.
Yeah.
They just feel like they needed to come. And then you dig a little deeper and you find out, well, they just had a death in the family. They just went through a divorce. They just had a traumatic experience, and they're there. And it's all about getting a new start. And it's perfect. Well, it's like a mechanism,
Really?
But it's on a large scale, and it's energetic. It's not something that you just pick up a book or listen to it on the radio and say, "Oh, go here if you want to get recharged."
Right.
But it just happens, and it's through the years I've seen a lot of evidence of that. It actually works. It's there for a reason.
That's so interesting. Now, I this was in a conversation with somebody prior to getting there. Did I hear right that that area had been excavated at some point?
At Serpent Mound, yes.
And then rebuilt, or?
Yes, Serpent Mound, when it was discovered by Squire and Davis in 1847, was only ankle high, and it was wooded. And then between 1847 and 1881, when Putnam came from Harvard, they had actually cleared the trees and planted it in corn. So it was a cornfield before they started their excavation. And the way we understand it, Putnam was an engineer, and he was the first archaeologist in the United States. So this is where archaeology began, was at Serpent Mound.
Really?
So, well, him being an engineer and figuring out how old Serpent Mound was, he looked at the skeletal remains and decided that these people were from South America. And he looked at how long have people been coming here from South America, how old the mounds are. I think at that time they even had an idea about somewhat about a relative age, about it being about 2,000 years old. And with him being an engineer, I think he looked at the rates of erosion, because that was an earthen mound, and they reconstructed it back to where it should be. So today, I think it's a fairly accurate representation of the way it was 2,000 years ago.
So during the excavation of it, you mentioned there were remains. So do we know how many remains were?
There was 20 individuals taken off of the site, and they were all in mounds, but none of them were in the serpent itself. There's one mound just to the left of the the rear of the snake's head, it's 30 feet wide, and there was 3 individuals in that mound. And there's actually 4 mounds that surround the oval of the serpent, and the Native American belief is that that's actually a turtle.
Oh.
And it's a serpent meeting a turtle. And the idea behind that is that the serpent came from South America, that whole belief of sun worship and marking the days for solstice and equinox. And the turtle is North America. Hence, it was an international trade hub with the river next to it, the Brush Creek. From there, you can go with a boat to the Ohio, to the Mississippi, to the Gulf of Mexico. Or if you went up the Mississippi, you could go to the Missouri and all the way out to Yellowstone.
No
So
kidding.
you're starting to see these trade goods here from South America, from Yellowstone, and they were importing back and forth along that river system like a superhighway. So you have a meeting of these 2 cultures, North and South America, trading.
Interesting. So let's get into the strangeness that's going on in that area. What kind of things have you become aware of that are just too difficult to look past?
Well, there's quite a bit, actually.
I mean, everybody knows, or most of my listeners know, that Ohio is well known for the Ohio grassman, Bigfoot.
Right.
You know, and that's one of my all-time favorite topics. But beyond that, there's some considerable strangeness there.
Well, I think the energy of the ground surrounding the crater, we call them magnetic anomalies. And this happens when, first of all, there's a fault line that runs through our property. It runs down Route 41. It goes all the way north to what they call the Greenfield Fault, and all the way to the south to the New Madrid. And this fault line was in the ocean a couple of billion years ago, when this was an ocean here. And this asteroid sailed in about 300,000 or 300 million years ago, before the Appalachians were formed. And it dug a hole into the substrata of the ocean about 6,000 feet deep. And when you get a disturbance like that in your rock column, it makes magnetic anomalies. But if you look at each layer of the Earth, has its own signature, magnetic signature, according to where that plate is on the Earth. So the plates are always rotating. So you're always getting different magnetic signatures according to the elevation on the Earth in the rock layers. And your son would know that in geology, of course.
Right. Yeah.
But so we get these magnetic disturbances here. They call them magnetic anomalies, and this whole area is disturbed like that. So what we're seeing is it allows things to come through what some people call paranormal. It's like the veils are thin, and so things happen here. I guess the strangest thing that happened when I first moved here, that kind of tipped me off as to how strange is this area. I went on a trip down to Louisville, Kentucky, and my ex-wife's grandma was living with us, and she was psychic. And I came home after a long trip, and she grabbed my arm and she goes, "Tom, is that you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, that's me, of course." And she goes, "Well, you were here 2 hours ago walking through the house, but you wouldn't talk to me." And I just went, "Oh, really?" And your hair was disheveled and you were wearing brown clothes and your face was dirty. I said, "No, I was 2 hours away." And so that kind of started it. And it's happened numerous times since then, not only with me, but with my wife, people that did the paranormal research on the house. Here recently, it happened to one of our cats. And people term it your doppelganger.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a correct analogy or not, but when it happens, it's kind of like, aha, I see it, The other night, my cat, I've got like 5 cats in this room right now. So if you see them running around, they're having fun. But I have one cat that comes to my door in the bedroom, and I have a little handle on there, and it rattles the handle to come in. She's real polite. And so I let her in. Her name's Ruth, and she goes walking through the bedroom and into the bathroom to eat. And my wife was in the bathroom, and I sat back down on the bed behind me here. And about 5 minutes later, rattle, rattle, rattle at the door. And I'm going, wait a minute. I've only got one cat that does that. So I opened the door, and lo and behold, here she comes through the door again. And it was the real one this time, because the first one that came through didn't talk to me. And when Ruth enters the room, they always greet you and say hi, meow.
Yeah.
And she went into the bathroom, and the other one disappeared. And I said to my wife, well, now we have to start watching our cats. Because all these years, I've never paid attention to the cats if there's more than one of them walking around of the same type.
Right. That's interesting. So aside from the cat, what else? What other experience? What other instances of that have you actually seen? Say your wife, for example, when she wasn't actually there.
Yes. There's been several sightings of me to be in 2 places at once. One more recently, I was outside working on a carving at the corner of the property. We like to carve things out of wood. And it was a hot summer day. And my wife noticed that I was out on the corner of the property. She'd just come back from Serpent Mound. And so she parked her car, and she noticed there was cars in the driveway. So there was probably people in the shop, and that happens around here a lot. We might be off doing something on the property, and somebody will go into the shop and I won't even know it. But anyway, so she runs in the shop, and there I am behind the counter. And she goes, you're out there at the corner of the property. And I go, no, I'm in here. And so, but it's happened with Terry, with my son-in-law. He's very skeptical, but over the years he's kind of come to the realization that this is for real. And we were in the shop one day getting ready for a sweat lodge. We do these inipis, and my wife's native, and so we do these sweat lodges. And we were in the back of the shop, and she was sitting at a table, had her jeans on, and talking to some people. And I sent Frank into the house to get something for a customer, and he walked down the sidewalk just past the sweat lodges right next to the shop. And he seen Terry out there dressing the sweat lodge and pointing to people to do things. And she was dressed up in a regalia. And he come back in the shop, and he saw Terry sitting there, and his face just turned white. He said, you're out there at the sweat lodge. And Terry said, no, I'm in here. And so, and that's happened a couple of times to him. And he just, she's really taken back by it.
Okay, I got to know. It seems that, like maybe in the beginning when you first started recognizing this, there would have had to have been some confusion. Was there ever a point where you found yourself having to prove that you were actually you and not the you that they thought they saw outside? Or do you get some looks like, are you the real one, or was the real one out there?
We found out that the ones that are replicating don't interact. They won't talk to you. They just go on about their business like they're in another dimension.
That's extremely interesting, because I just had a gentleman on the show a couple of weeks ago. His name's Mike Ricksecker, and he's got a new book out, Travels Through Time, I think it is. And during our conversation, he was I wish I could remember the guy's name, but it was, let's say, turn of the century. The gentleman was walking down the street, and he viewed a gentleman on the opposite, coming the opposite way, who had a very distinct coat that had a gold trim around the outside edges of the coat. Mm-hmm. And he was struck by how this gentleman looked and the way he carried himself and everything. And then years later, he was walking down that same street and realized that the coat that he had on, that he had purchased for himself, was that same coat that he had seen the other gentleman wearing, because it had the shiny gold outline on the coat.
Wow.
And so essentially what he was getting at was that he had seen his own doppelganger. But in the conversation with Mike, it was more of something affecting the veil, as you said, where he was able to actually see himself.
Wow.
A future version of himself. And that sounds very, very similar to what you're talking about, only yours seem to be not necessarily a future version of you, but, something that you'd be doing in an alternate dimension.
Yeah, I'm not seeing myself. Everyone else sees me.
Okay, so you don't see yourself.
No, I haven't seen myself. I've come pretty close to seeing myself. One morning we were waking up to go do a dig, because I like to dig rocks. So we were going to leave early and go up to a place called Flint Ridge, which is about 2.5 hours away. It's up by Zanesville, Ohio. And I told my son-in-law, who's in the room across the way upstairs, I said, we're leaving at 6 o'clock. And 6 o'clock, I opened up my bedroom door to go out, and I closed the door because I forgot something in the room. And I grabbed whatever it was I was supposed to get, and I heard my son-in-law talking out in the hallway. And I opened the door, and I said, "Who are you talking to?" And he looked at me, and he says, "You just went downstairs." And I said, "No, I've been in the room. I was going to go downstairs." So it's like my energy, my intention went downstairs, and he saw that. And that's the kind of thing that just makes you go, this is, how do you explain it, right?
So you said, did I hear you right? Did you say you've had a paranormal team investigate the house?
We had a team of 4 people. They live up the road, and a mother, daughter, and a son-in-law, and a father, and they came out, and they were into dowsing and paranormal research, and they had all these little gadgets, Yeah. They were recording everything and had little handheld devices. And I said, "Yeah, come on out." And they came out. It was in the summer, and this has been probably 8 years ago. And 2 of them went upstairs. They were in teams. And 2 went upstairs to my daughter's room, which is pretty much a haunted room for sure. There's always something going on in there. And the mother-daughter were in there, and then the father and the son-in-law were down in another room downstairs, but they wired our house for sound. And they had to do it in the evening when our road traffic died down, because we're right on a state route. Mm-hmm. And after about an hour, my wife and I were sitting on the porch on the couch there, and one lady came down, and Terry said to her, she said, "How's it going up there?" And the lady didn't say anything. She just kind of walked down the stairs, out on the front lawn, kind of gazed around, came back up, didn't even pay us any attention, and went back upstairs. And about an hour later, she came down with her mother, and my wife says, "Hey, how come you didn't talk to me when you came downstairs about an hour ago?" And she goes, "I've been up there for 2 hours." And so, and they pulled it. I guess they pulled the sound on that, and sure enough, it was on the sound recording that she did come down the stairs, and we did talk to her. And so, there's evidence there to support what I'm saying, but
right.
It's something, when it happens, you don't put 2 and 2 together. because it's a reality. It's not like you're seeing a ghost figure.
Yeah.
You're seeing something in 3 dimensions that makes noise, that does things. It's not completely invisible, like where you hear about people walking through walls and things. I haven't experienced that yet.
Ghost cat.
That's my cat.
But consistently, whoever it is that is being witnessed, there's no interaction.
No.
And it's obviously got nothing to do with just you guys there in the house. It's got because these people come in with no relation to you whatsoever, right. and it's happening with them as well.
Yeah, and here's the history of the house. It goes back. The house was built in 1881, and through the years, there's been 3 different families live here. The last family to live here, the guy is a mortician. He owns funeral homes in the area. And the house had been abandoned for 25 years before I bought it. It was on a burn list with the fire department. And this contractor came by that restores old Victorians, and he took a gamble on it. He bought it. And he spent 3 years working on it, restoring it. And at the end of those 3 years, he decided that he was not going to live here. So he sold the house. He basically dumped it on the market and took a loss on it. And that's the day that somebody said, we need pictures of Serpent Mound from the World Peace Mission. And I just happened to drive by the house the day they dropped the price, and I bought it. But the day after I bought that house, he showed up in my driveway, and he says, have you seen any spoofs yet? And I said, what's a spoof? Because I'd never heard that term before.
Yeah, I haven't either.
And these guys are very religious people. This whole community is. It's a Bible Belt. And so, we're not well received here anyway. The local people think we're doing daily sacrifices and whatnot, which is fine. They can stay away as far as I'm concerned. But that statement, have you seen any spoofs yet, got me going like, what's he really talking about? And then that happened with that instance where I was down in Louisville and I was seen here in the house. But other things have happened, throughout the course of the years where something falls off of a wall, or the water turns on a faucet all by itself, or you'll lay something down on a counter and turn around and it's gone, and you go like, all right, who's playing games with me? So I found out that the energies here, they're very mischievous. And they both basically have fun. They try to get your goat, and but they're not harmful. They're not like poltergeists or something.
Yeah.
But they can physically move things around, and they do mess with you. It's kind of like a game.
Yeah. So, you made an interesting comment, with that being the Bible Belt, and by and large, you're frowned upon by the local community. Have you found any kindred spirits? Have you found any like-minded people that you're able to enjoy some kind of a relationship with, and do they experience similar things in that area?
Yeah, this whole area is haunted, if you want to call it that. The store across the street, for example.
The Dollar General.
The Dollar General. That's for whatever reason, there was a house across the street built about the same time our house was built. And it was like the maid's house, the guest or the worker's house. It's a small little 2-story frame. And that house was haunted. We knew that by people that came out and tried to do paranormal research there. And after 5 minutes in the house, they had to walk away from it because it was so haunted. And it wasn't a good haunting. It was, things were being thrown, words were being said, apparently.
Really?
But the people that left that house, they said, that's the first time that's ever happened. But anyway, they tore that house down. And when they did, they built the Dollar General right where that house was. And the day they opened that Dollar General, the general manager of it, she was a customer in the rock shop. and she sent us a video, and she said, I think it's on our Facebook group. It has a 2-gallon jug of laundry detergent on the top shelf at 11:30 in the morning, sliding off the shelf all by itself and going boosh all over the floor. Nobody around. And that was the first instance of saying, all right, it's not just our house.
Yeah.
It's got to be the ground.
Now, when I was there back in October, weren't you saying that it is that Dollar General has a problem with keeping employees because of...
Yep. Yeah, and I don't, it's hard to say if it's because they don't pay them enough or they overwork them.
It's probably a combination.
Yeah, but they there's a lot to be said about what goes on in that store and the little games that are played. The history of the area. Apparently, there was 2 little children that died around the age of 5. One in the barn next door that accidentally hung himself. He was playing on a ladder and a rope and slipped and hung himself. And then across the street is where the little girl lived in that house. And whatever happened, both of them died around the age of 5. And I guess it created some problems with families. But those 2 kids have been seen on my front lawn dancing in the mist. And I actually had a customer drive in my driveway one day, and she said, "Did you know there's 2 little children playing in your front yard?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any little children, but I believe you."
No kidding.
Yeah. So it's people visually see things. Sometimes people, I know when I first moved in, somebody drove by and stopped and took a picture of the front of the house. And in that picture was a little old lady standing there who didn't live here. Nobody lived here. But yes, she was standing in the window. And I've had other people comment, "Hey, there's somebody up there in that room looking at me." And I go, "There's nobody up there."
That's interesting that you say that. I had a friend of mine years ago that I worked with. And, this was years ago. And I was already into, ghosts and all the other stuff, and I've never really shied away from talking about that stuff. I could care less if you believe me or not. If you don't want to hear it, walk away. It's I don't care. And he knew I was into it, and he brought me a picture that they had taken of his grandmother's house on Easter Day, and the house was there was another house across the street that family members lived in as well. And they took a picture of the grandma's house on Easter Day because all the affairs had been taken care of, and they were getting ready it was going to be sold. And they took a picture, and standing in the front window of the house, you could see a older woman with an Easter bonnet type hat, and it was grayed out. There was no color to it. And it was the eeriest photograph of literally this woman standing in her window. And he said, "Do you know anywhere where I can get this blown up?" And at the time I had a friend of mine who worked at Gene's camera store. And I sent him to Gene's camera store to have Mark, I think it was Mark Allstott, to enlarge the photo as large as they could. And he brought the large print in, and it was pretty amazing. And he's like, "Without a doubt, that is my grandmother standing there."
Wow.
But no color. It didn't look like a person. It looked like a grayed out, colorless outline with highlights to it. And it was unmistakably a woman standing in a dress with a fancy hat on.
Wow.
And that was very interesting. That was quite a cool photograph.
Mm-hmm. We've had, I think we have one picture on our website of a person walking down the stairs, and they're all black, and we have like a winding staircase, and it just gets them from the knees up. But it's a man. He has a beard,
Really?
and he's all black. It's like a shadow figure.
Yeah.
So there are shadow figures here. There's every once in a while something will talk to you, and there's nobody here. That's kind of unnerving, when they call you out by name.
Yeah.
And but it's
Like
not
loud,
like,
very audible.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, very like they're standing right next to you. But they're not. There's no conversation. It's just like they'll say Tom, or I think the longest conversation that happened was my wife's daughter. She was walking downstairs in the middle of the night, and about halfway down on the staircase, this gentleman went, cleared his throat, and then he said, "Mayrose, you're Terry's daughter." And that was the end of the conversation, but that was enough to unnerve you, right?
Yeah. That's interesting because my daughter and her boyfriend, they rent a cottage in around Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they've been there for about a year. And before she had started spending a lot of time there, I knew her boyfriend from coaching him in high school football, and he got a hold of me and said, "Hey, I think this cottage that I'm renting is got some stuff going on. So if you're interested, let's get you and Jake, my son, and let's do an investigation." So, I have some equipment, but it's limited. It's not like I'm carrying around $2,000 worth of investigative equipment. And we went there, and we waited till probably around 1:00 in the morning before we started doing our investigation. And this storm that rolled in, I have never seen in my life an electrical storm with the amount of lightning that this storm had. And I can remember making the comment, it's like, man, if it's ripe for the picking here, because with all this energy that's in the air, if we don't get something, I will be extremely surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And I had actually taken all my podcasting equipment, and we had 6 mics going at the same time. And I thought that I was going to be able to put together this awesome live podcast while we were doing an investigation, and it was going to be really cool. Nobody's ever done it before. Well, what I didn't realize was that I was recording in multi-track, so every one of the 6 the 6 channels has about 4.5 hours worth of audio on each channel. And so to be able to navigate that and go through and, just being one person, it's just proven to be a monumental task. But we did get some pretty compelling evidence while we were there. And now that she's spending a good deal of time there, that is the one thing that she remarks in hearing voices from other parts of the cottage when nobody else is there. There will be times where it sounds like it's coming from the kitchen. There will be times where it sounds like it's coming from up the stairway, and there's nobody else there. But clear as a bell, she's heard a woman's voice. And she's not terrified of it. But the word unnerving, I think, is probably a pretty good explanation, or a pretty good descriptor for it. She's a little nerved out by it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it goes to the individual when you hear something like that. Like my son-in-law walked through the back door downstairs. He leads into the kitchen one day after he got off work, and he started to open the door, and he could hear a bunch of women talking and laughing in the kitchen, like there was a card game going on or something. And he opened the door and walked in, and there was nobody there. Nobody else in the house heard this. He heard it.
Yeah.
And it seems like maybe it's just geared towards one person, or it's just you were meant to hear this. I know one night after I had got divorced about 12 years ago, and I was up in this one bedroom by myself, and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I laid my head down on the pillow, and lo and behold, this whatever it was sat down beside me in the bed. And the bed went down, and I just kind of like, okay, time to go.
Yeah, I don't think I would like that one.
But there's just little things like that I think they just want to be recognized more than anything.
Yeah.
And it's a funny way of showing it, but it's better than having something thrown at you or you getting thrown somewhere.
Definitely, yeah.
They're polite. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So, what other kind of things do we have going on over in that area? I know we touched on the crop circle, and there was probably a pretty significant UFO sighting right above the Serpent Mound, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, let me get to the crop circle. You're talking about lightning storms.
Mm-hmm.
The night the crop circle happened, we were at a community drumming, and there was probably a couple hundred people there. This guy down the road, he's an ex-science teacher. He has a place called the Magic Gardens, and real landscape, beautiful, out in the middle of nowhere type property. And we're all there drumming, and everybody's taking pictures, people dancing around the fire. And about midnight, this violent storm rolled through, and it was lightning like I had never seen before. It was one of those storms like you do not want to be on this hilltop when this storm hits.
Yeah.
And everybody left. It was like a bomb went off. Everybody just vacated that place. And people sent their pictures in, and they got them back, and lo and behold, in these pictures, there's hundreds of orbs.
Really?
And it didn't matter what kind of camera you were using, those orbs were in the pictures. Some had geometrical patterns. They were coming out people's ears and eyes and noses, and it was like unbelievable. And he made an album of that, just that one instance. And that is the time that the crop circle appeared next to Serpent Mound.
Really?
The next day, we got up. Somebody said, hey, you got to go down to Serpent Mound. There's something going on down there. And right in the soybean field, a half a mile from Serpent Mound, like right off the entrance to the right across the river, there in the corner of the field is this 270-foot wide crop circle. And it was in 28 inches of soybeans, and they were not broken. When you get soybeans that high, if you try to walk through them, they'll break them. They're very brittle. And these beans were laid down in a geometrical pattern, all going in one direction. And there was instances of people that had said that they actually saw these blue orbs above that field as that thing was being formed. And the lady that owns the property, her name is Molly, the house across the street, there's a spring, a public spring there where people gather water. And her mom passed away in that house the night of that crop circle. And she never had that field planted again. It's still in set aside to this day.
Really?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's just it's one of those phenomena that the local people made fun of it. They accused us of making it like we're Ted and Bob with the string and a board.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not that smart. I'm sorry. That was a nice geometrical pattern they made in that field. But the police, when we went out there to investigate it, there was a whole team of people that investigated it. And they said, man didn't make this. And the police were trying to stop people from going down in the field, and they were making fun of us, saying, oh, the aliens are coming, and has they seen any spaceships lately? And you get that whole conversation, and you just see that they were not into the scientific end of it. And fortunately, there was a team of people there that were, and they took the right measurements and readings for radiation. And there's a lot written on it, actually. If you go to a site called International Crop Circle Researchers Association, ICCRA, online, you can see all the crop circles in this region that have been made over the years.
Have there been a number of them then?
There's been quite a few. They're all they're all within a mile of what we call a sacred site or a mound burial site. There was one at the Site Mound the same time that Serpent Mound happened, and they found that by renting an airplane at a local airport and actually flying off of their flight path and seeing this in a field. And so they reported that, and they found out it's made in the same medium. Come to find out, the farmer, that field is well protected. It has a stream that goes all the way around this 40-acre field. And when they talked to the farmer, he says, we get crop circles out there every year, but they don't tell anybody because they don't want people coming in and disturbing his crops.
Yeah.
So they keep it quiet.
That's something that, crop circles always fascinated me when they first started coming to prominence. And then, the two gentlemen who were able to do a very good facsimiles of him with their strings and their board, that seemed to kind of quell everything. And it's like, from that point on, crop circles were all a hoax. They were all, and I don't think that's true. I think those guys figured out a very good way to approximate mimicking how they were made so that they looked good.
Right.
But there is still some scientific stuff. There was something to do with like the knuckles that of the grass or the wheat or something, that the way that they were like blown out from the inside.
Yeah, they call it a necrosis.
And they're very interesting. I still think there's something to them. I think, unfortunately, because somebody was able to show how to hoax doing them, that killed the relevance of all of them. And I don't think they're all hoaxes.
No, I think there's a lot of evidence pointing in the other direction that they're messages. And the one that was formed at the Mound City Group in Chillicothe, that's a Hopewell site on the Scioto River. That was made about, I think it's been about 6 years ago. Somebody actually flying over that area in a small plane and happened to see it. It's in a cornfield, and it was 3 days before harvest. And they got dizzy in the plane. They couldn't figure out why, but they were taking these pictures, and it turns out to be a crop circle that's 360 feet wide in the corn, and the corn was bent on right angles. You cannot bend a corn stalk on a right angle without breaking it. And it had 47 circles in it. Looked like a jellyfish. There's one main circle, 7 circles around that. Then each circle had little ones coming off of it.
I've seen that one.
Yeah. And
I've seen the photograph of that. Yeah.
That was at Chillicothe. In fact, it's on that site I was telling you about. And the guy that did the research on it, Jeffrey Wilson, he was into physics. He taught at a university up in Michigan. And he went through all his notes and everything, and he found out that it was the exact duplicate of a fractal particle identified in 1980. So you go like, okay, here's a fractal particle, one of the smallest particles in the universe, right? And it's blown up to 360 feet across in a cornfield. And he said when you walk through that cornfield, they got permission from the landowner before harvest, and they got a team together and they went through it. And the corn, he said, if you got in that crop circle, you would get lost because the corn was bent on right angles. It was a 3-dimensional crop circle. And so the corn was at different heights in the crop circle.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And who does that, right?
That's interesting. I've never heard of, like I said, they kind of fell out of relevance, once people started being able to hoax them. So I never looked into or heard of any that were, the way they were developed were in a 3-dimensional.
Yeah. And there was another one at Miamisburg. They were all within a mile of the sites of these burial sites, like where there was a mound or where there was some kind of effigy in the ground. So, is it the people from the past speaking? Is it the energy in the ground? It's anyone's guess. But $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
But I don't discount it. I really don't. I think there's a lot to be learned about all of this, the paranormal and energies, and this is just one small area on the earth where somebody's actually sitting here paying attention to what's going on and trying to document it. I mean, that's my main goal is, or one of them is to write a book about it.
Oh, really?
All the experiences of people's cars that, the energy of the area actually affects computers, cars, batteries, weather. When you get somebody with a brand new car, or a tourist, they rent a car, they come out here, they park at Serpent Mound, or they park in my driveway or somewhere in that crater, and their battery goes dead. And it's the energy in the ground just sucks the energy out of batteries. And or even better, you'll get out of your car for a second and leave your car keys in the ignition or on your seat, and your door locks lock automatically. And that's just one of the little things that happens out here in the weird energy of this ground out here.
Now, have you, obviously you've paid attention to your surroundings, but have you ever looked into any other areas that are experiencing the same types of things elsewhere in the country? Are you aware of?
I am. It's one of the fault lines are notorious for changing, for making this phenomena or creating the phenomena. One of the fault lines that runs up I-35 out of Dallas-Fort Worth, they say that it'll be pouring rain on one side and dry on the other of this 4-lane highway. And we've experienced the same phenomena here with the fault. One with weather. There's a ghost rim of this crater. It's out about 7 miles from the center of the crater. And there's a curve in the road, real sharp curve. You can drive it going 60 miles an hour. And about halfway through that curve is the ghost rim. In other words, this crater was formed so long ago that was much bigger at one time. Okay. And over time, 1,000 feet of our top has been eroded away. So the outer rim of this crater is gone. But where it used to be, it left an energy field, a magnetic anomaly.
Okay.
And it just happens to cross right there where the curve in the road is. And what happens in the wintertime, you'll get rain or frozen snow on one side of the curve, and then on the other side of the curve is dry. So imagine driving down that road and hit that curve 60 miles an hour and it's dry, and you get halfway through the curve and it's ice. So there's been 7 people killed there since I've lived here.
Oh, no kidding.
That curve.
That's
and
terrible.
It's either weather related, like there's rain on one side, dry on the other, or snow on one side, dry on the other. And and right across the street in that curve is a haunted house. It's called the Wickerham Tavern, and it's in all the ghost books. And they claim that this guy he was a stagecoach driver. He got decapitated. They found his body, but they never found his head on the 3rd story of the house. And there's been tales about this guy is standing out in the middle of Route 41 on this curve that's 60 miles an hour, standing there holding his head. And it freaks people out,
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I just hear about it.
Do you ever notice any, as far as the weather goes, have you ever noticed any drastic temperature differences? That it's, say 65 and sunny, and then all of a sudden it's considerably colder. And
what I've noticed about the weather is that the anomalies that are created in the ground affect cloud banks. And the first example I saw of that was watching the Weather Channel during a storm. And as it approached the crater, it was, they color code them red, yellow, green, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
And this cloud, it was a violent storm, and it's coming from the west. It's heading right towards the crater. And when it gets right up to the edge of the crater rim, it goes brown. And it's brown all the way across the crater. There's no rain in it. And what happened was the storm was dissipated by the ground energy. So you've got an energy in the ground working with the energy in the clouds, the cumulonimbus cloud that's charged, and it neutralizes it. And the cloud either dissipates or it splits and it goes around. So we've talked to a lot of people over the years, and they say, yeah, we watch the storms, and they split when they come up to that point in the crater, and they either go around or they completely disappear.
So if those clouds are charged and capable of producing lightning and all that, is that crater doing the same thing it's doing to the people with the car batteries and everything? Is it draining that energy from the clouds?
Yes, and that's what we've witnessed so far. And it's not just me and a few people. We've actually had 2 conferences now where storms have been recorded coming across and approaching the edge of that crater. And then people, and I'll lecture about this during these conferences about the crater and the energies. And lo and behold, it happens right in front of hundreds of people. You say, there's your evidence, there's your proof. The storm was coming at us full blast, and now it's gone.
Jeez.
And I think the natives actually saw that. I'm sure. Of course, they didn't know it was an asteroid crater. We didn't know it was an asteroid crater till 1998. But it was before that time. I believe that with the indigenous being as sensitive as they are to energies, they knew that this area was special. And I think that had a lot to do with why Serpent Mound was built where it was.
So you spent a lot of time digging in the dirt.
A lot.
Have you come into contact? Have you found any trace pieces of the actual meteorite? Or
yes.
Or is it just the fragments of the earth that were compacted during that?
It's just fragments. It's called breccia, and it's there's actually we've actually got a DVD out online, and it's also on YouTube. Here, I'll show you. I don't know if I can get this close enough to the screen.
It's blurry.
Yeah, it's called Serpent Mound Impact Crater Tour.
Hold it up again, but close to your chest there. No, back it up.
I'll back it up.
Yep, there you go. Serpent Mound Impact Crater Tour.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a 23-minute clip. It's actually a tour of the crater, and it explains all the anomalies and everything that can be found in it. But there's a lot to be said about the material found in the crater besides actual what they call breccia. The breccia has the ingredients of the asteroid in it: cobalt, chromium, nickel, iridium, iron, and zinc.
Really?
And but you need like a mass spectrometer to read it, because you got to figure this thing hit an ocean bottom and drove a hole 6,000 feet deep, 5 miles wide, and it had to be a pretty hefty object, but yet it hit so hard it vaporized. So what you're looking at in that rock, that breccia, is just vapors of that rock. So the only reason we know the crater is as deep as it is because mining interests back in the 60s could see that signature in samples with their mass spectrometers and said, there's a chromium deposit there somewhere. So they core drilled this whole area 6,000 feet down, and they couldn't find it. So they just left it alone. Today there's no way exploration is going to go crazy like that, mining right, and spending that kind of money.
What's the deepest or what's the highest elevation still recognizable from the impact crater?
Well, there's the center of the crater is called the central uplift, and that's I'm not sure the elevation, but the rock that's exposed there is a vertical rock. So you got to imagine dropping something in a bucket of water. It sends a shock wave around, and then it comes back up in the center. It recoils. Okay, that's what happens in a crater. When something impacts water, it'll send a shock wave down, and then it'll come back up. And on the way back up, it released the energy of that plate of the earth and stood it vertical. So the very center of the crater, there's a mountain of vertical rock in the center. And that rock that's in the center is the same rock that's found in Cincinnati at the Ohio River, which is almost 1,000 feet below us.
Wow.
In reality. So it gives you proof that that rock was in the seabed 1,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, of the bottom, and then it was shot up and it's exposed today. And in that rock, there's a pattern called shatter cones, and it's just a little signature on the rock. It looks like someone took and hit it with a hammer. It has a little fracture across it, but it's more pronounced, and you can only find it in an asteroid crater. So.
My son, on one of his first expeditions into Canada when he was in college for being a geologist, he ended up bringing me back a little bit smaller than a tennis ball size rock that has that fracture going through it, and he explained that to me. That was really cool. I actually have it on a shelf right over here.
Yeah, that's the Sudbury crater. It's up in northern Canada. And it's one of the largest impact craters on the Earth, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, they're mining iron up there. It's probably iron from the asteroid. It's hard to say, but they've been up there mining for a long time. But yeah, the Sudbury crater is one of the oldest craters on the Earth. It's up in the Canadian Shield. That's one thing about. I never got into asteroid craters until I moved to Adams County. Yeah. So it was just a surprise.
Well, Thomas, have we covered pretty much the gambit of the weird there, or?
Yeah, you have. It's just it's an ongoing thing, and we hear stories. Like people go to Serpent Mound and they see things and then they disappear. People take pictures and they see things in their pictures that it's like, one thing I noticed about Serpent Mound is it magnifies the consciousness. And I believe that might be why they one of the reasons why they put it right where it is, about new beginnings. But I think if you go there and meditate and give an intention, it's heard and magnified. And there's been several instances of that magnification happening with groups of people. And somebody will be thinking about Serpent Mound, like we had a skull conference there with Humboldt's men. He was a Mayan elder. He wrote the book on 2012 with the beginning of the Mayan calendar, the end of it. And he brought his skulls out there, and he had them on the head of the turtle, if you will. And we were all there watching him give his talk. And somebody said, "Look up," and we all looked up. Here's this clear sky, and there's a perfect skull above us in the clouds. These clouds just formed to form a skull that we were doing a ceremony with.
So these skulls that he had, I'm assuming they were like some sort of a crystalline structure, or?
Yeah, they were all stone. They're from different places on the earth.
Uh-huh.
And there's a whole philosophy about, the 13 skulls and all that. But these were just skulls from different parts of the world that he had in a collection that he brought together. And it happened with a community circle one time. We had a couple hundred people form a circle out there. And it was what they call cross quarter, in between spring equinox and summer solstice. And we were celebrating, and we're all holding hands and meditating and thinking about Serpent Mound. And again, someone said, "Look up," and we looked up, and there is a perfect replica of Serpent Mound in the sky. And it's like, okay, it magnifies whatever is going on with a group or an individual. And it's been noted, more than once and more than one person has seen this.
How interesting. I mean, I got to ask, does anybody within that celebration, within that circle, get any photographs of these images in the sky?
I don't know if there was any pictures taken or not. I just know what I saw.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to go back and ask some people. Of course, Humbat's man, he passed away, but there's just been phenomena out there that you can't explain. And the only way you can say it is it's got to be a product of your own mind, that creates these things.
Yeah.
And it's just the right atmosphere, the right magnetics, if you will, like a tear in the fabric of time that allows this to happen. And then you get a group of people to witness it, and that's even better. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always good to have extra people witnessing it. I mean, even if you're not getting it recorded some way or captured on film, having other people there that are seeing what's going on,
right?
That bolsters one's confidence into realizing that it wasn't just something that they were seeing in their own head. So
right, yep.
Well, great conversation, Thomas. Thank you so much for taking the time. Do me a favor before we cut this off. Let everybody know how they can reach you, what you got going on coming up in the future. It sounds like you're doing some speaking engagements at conferences, and I'd almost encourage you to maybe think about.
This is the one that's coming up next.
Back it up a little bit more, if you would. There you go. There you go.
There it goes. Now, it's a light off of it. Maybe that's better. I don't know if you can see that or not.
I can see the shape, but I can't read what the...
Light's driving me crazy. There. Maybe you can see it. It's the...
Solar Eclipse 2024.
Solar Eclipse, 6th of April through the 8th. And that'll be at a property just not too far from Serpent Mound. And the last one is a 3-day ceremony with different tribes that come in. And it's just, the last one we had was at Serpent Mound in 2017, and we had 1,100 people show up.
Wow. Serpent
Mound said, "You will not be doing any more ceremonies at Serpent Mound."
Oh.
They can only park 200 cars in their parking lot. So yeah, it was a zoo. But they didn't like the fact that they were afraid of what the public might see or learn. And it was an international drum circle with a couple of Lakota chiefs. And it was just an exceptional time. And
now those drum circles, those are very interesting. In your opinion, is it just... Is it the centralized intent with all those people, or is there something about the frequency or the vibration of the actual drumming that aids in the experience of it?
I never. I've only participated in a couple of drum circles, and it was just it gave everybody a good feeling. And but the drum circles that are traditional are more like a group of natives that know songs, and they have a big drum, and there's different songs for funerals or welcoming songs or thank you songs, and there's a specific rhythm that they have, like the rhythm of the heart. And it's more or less speaking to the universe, putting a message out of thank you. Mm-hmm. But the drum circles themselves, I've yet to figure out what their idea is on that. I think people just get together and like to drum and have a good time and a good vibration. But the significance of it has never really struck me. I was gravitated more towards the Native Americans and how they do a drum. Yeah.
Thomas, if you will, one more time before we get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you and and find your stuff.
Yeah. AlternateUniverseRockShop.com. And on Facebook, let me get what is our Facebook handle there, Terry?
Serpent Mound Star Knowledge Peace Summit.
Okay. Serpent Mound Star Knowledge Peace Summit, or Summits. And there you'll find a group page on there.
Okay.
And that's all of our current and past events.
And if they're looking to come visit you at the storefront, you're located where?
I'm located in Adams County, Ohio, on State Route 41, 29894 State Route 41, and Peebles, Ohio, 45660.
And the name of the shop is?
Phacops. And Phacops means many eyes in Latin. It's a type of trilobite.
Oh, is it really? I wondered what it was.
Yeah. Phacops is a trilobite. That eye system was used by the government to create Star Wars, Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. And they back engineered the lenses of this 350 million year old extinct eye system. And they're actually, MIT did this, and they're actually using it in space to watch the Earth.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. It's a whole nother story.
Holy cow. That's cool. Well, we're going to have to talk about that at some other point.
Okay.
You just dropped a bomb, Thomas. You just dropped a bomb at the end of the show.
Yeah, why not? The only thing we ask is, I know on these podcasts that people will want to come out and do paranormal research, and we don't allow it. We love the spirits just the way they are.
Yeah, and I'm sure my listeners will be happy to respect that.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to have any issues with that.
All right. Well, you didn't have an uncomfortable podcast. I don't know why you call it that.
Well, the truth be known, when I came up with the idea for the name, I thought that some people would be uncomfortable talking about their experiences. I thought that some people would be uncomfortable with me asking them questions about the experiences. And it never really dawned on me until an episode early on that I would wind up being uncomfortable because of who I was talking to. And it does seem to, a lot of people kind of think, well, I'm not sure I want to go on a show called Uncomfortable because you're going to ambush me and make me feel, stupid. And by the end of it, everybody says it was not an uncomfortable experience.
Right.
So
you're right. Yeah, that was good. I appreciate you putting me on and let me talk about my experiences.
It's been a true pleasure, sir. I look forward to seeing you again in person next time I get out that way. And even if I'm within an hour, I'm going to make sure that we come by and say hi.
All right. Great.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.